When a powerful tech millionaire freezes in the hospital lobby, staring at a young medical intern with his exact same eyes, 19 years of secrets come crashing down in an instant. The son he never knew existed, the woman he was forced to abandon, and the father whose prejudice tore them apart, all collide in a storm of betrayal, regret, and a desperate chance at redemption. What happens when a deathbed confession reveals the truth that destroyed 3 lives before they even had a chance to begin? Can a family forged in pain and secrets ever heal? Or will the walls built over 2 decades prove too strong to tear down? Will a father earn the right to be called dad by the brilliant young man who grew up wondering why he wasn't wanted? Hit subscribe and drop a comment if you've ever wondered whether some broken things deserve a second chance at being whole. Ethan Walsh checked his watch as he walked through the sliding glass doors of Mercy General Hospital. The bright afternoon sun gave way to the cool air of the lobby. He straightened his blue tie and brushed a hand through his dark hair. At 38, success had come easy to him. His tech company had made him rich beyond his dreams. But something was always missing. Today was just another business meeting. The hospital wanted his new medical software. He would smile, shake hands, and sign papers, just like always. Ethan's footsteps echoed on the shiny floor as he crossed the lobby. The smell of disinfectant filled the air. People moved around him, some worried, some hopeful, some in white coats rushing to help others. And then he saw her. Standing at the reception desk was a woman with warm brown skin and curly black hair pulled back in a neat bun. Even from behind, he knew who it was. His heart stopped. Alice Cole. The woman he had loved in college. The woman whose heart he had broken 19 years ago. She turned slightly, laughing at something someone said. Her smile was just as bright as he remembered. The years had only made her more beautiful. But it wasn't Alice who made Ethan freeze in his tracks. It was the young man standing beside her, tall and slim, with light brown skin and curly hair cut short. He wore a white coat over blue scrubs. A hospital ID badge hung from his pocket. He couldn't be more than 19 or 20. When the young man turned, Ethan felt like he was looking in a mirror from the past. The same sharp jawline, the same straight nose, the same piercing blue eyes. His eyes. Ethan couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think. Alice put her hand on the young man's shoulder. "Ryan, don't forget your round start in 10 minutes. Ryan. The young man's name was Ryan. "I know, Mom," he said with a playful eye roll. "Dr. Patterson will kill me if I'm late again." "Mom." She called him Mom. Ryan and Alice walked toward the elevator, neither noticing the stunned man standing in the middle of the lobby. As the doors closed behind them, Ethan finally found his voice. "That can't be," he whispered to the empty space where they had been. Ethan sat in his car in the hospital parking lot, his head resting on the steering wheel. The leather seats of his expensive BMW couldn't comfort him now. His mind raced with questions, but one thought kept coming back. Ryan had to be 19 years old. 19 years since he and Alice broke up. 19 years since he had chosen his family's approval and his career over the woman he loved. The memories came flooding back. He and Alice had met during their sophomore year in college. She was studying nursing while he pursued computer science. They were from different worlds. Her from a working-class family in the city, him from old money in the suburbs. But none of that had mattered when they were together. For 2 years, they had been inseparable until his father found out. Daniel Walsh had been clear. "Either you end things with that girl or I cut you off. No more tuition, no more connections, no more family." Ethan had been young, ambitious, and afraid. He had dreams of starting his own company. He needed his father's support to make it happen, so he had broken Alice's heart, told her they wanted different things, that they should focus on their careers, that they wouldn't work out in the long run. She had cried, begged him to reconsider, said they could make it work. But he had walked away. And now, 19 years later, a young man with his eyes was calling Alice Mom. Ethan started his car with shaking hands. He needed time to think, to process what he had seen. But deep down he already knew the truth. Ryan was his son. Sleep didn't come that night. Ethan paced his penthouse apartment, the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His mind kept replaying the scene at the hospital. Around 2 a.m., he sat at his computer and searched for Mercy General Hospital staff directory. He scrolled through the list until he found it. Alice Cole, RN, Pediatric Department. There was no picture, but it was her, his Alice. Except she wasn't his anymore. She hadn't been for 19 years. Ethan closed his eyes and saw Ryan's face again. There was no denying the resemblance. The young man was the perfect mix of Alice's warmth and his own sharp features. He had a son he never knew existed, a son who had grown up without him. By morning, Ethan had made a decision. He had to know for sure. He had to see them again. He called his assistant as soon as the clock hit 8 a.m. "Janet, cancel all my meetings today, and find out who I need to talk to about making a donation to Mercy General's children's wing." The next day, Ethan walked into the hospital with purpose. His heart raced as he approached the information desk. "I have an appointment with Dr. Pierce about a donation," he told the receptionist, who pointed him toward the administration offices. As he turned the corner, his breath caught in his throat. Alice was walking down the hallway, checking something on a clipboard. She wore light blue scrubs and comfortable shoes, a stethoscope around her neck. She looked focused, professional. She looked up and stopped mid-step when she saw him. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. 19 years fell away in an instant. Ethan saw the young woman he had loved, while Alice saw the man who had broken her heart. "Alice," he finally managed to say. "Ethan." Her voice was controlled, but he could see the shock in her eyes. "What are you doing here?" Before he could answer, footsteps approached from behind him. "Hey, Mom, Dr. Patterson wants to know if—" Ryan stopped when he saw them. He looked between Ethan and his mother with curiosity. "Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt." Alice quickly composed herself. "It's fine, honey. Ryan, this is an old friend from college. Ethan Walsh." Ryan smiled politely and held out his hand. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Walsh. Ryan Cole. I'm interning here for the summer before my second year of med school." Ethan shook his son's hand, feeling a surge of emotions he couldn't name. Pride, regret, wonder. "Med school at 19? You must be very smart," Ethan said, his voice thick. Ryan laughed. "I started college early. Mum says I was always in a hurry." "Ryan, didn't you say Dr. Patterson was looking for me?" Alice cut in. "Oh, right. He wants to know if you can help with the new patient in room 304. Tell him I'll be there in 5 minutes." Ryan nodded and headed back down the hall. Ethan couldn't help but notice that when Ryan was nervous, he ran his hand through his hair, exactly the same way Ethan did. Once Ryan was out of earshot, Alice turned to Ethan, her eyes hard. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered before walking away, leaving Ethan standing alone in the hallway. Dr. Lorraine Pierce was a tall, imposing woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through people. "So, Mr. Walsh, you're interested in donating to our children's wing?" she asked as they sat in her office. Ethan nodded, trying to focus on the meeting instead of the questions swirling in his mind. "Yes, my company has been doing well, and I believe in giving back." Dr. Pierce studied him for a moment. "That's very generous. May I ask why you chose our hospital specifically?" Ethan had prepared for this question. "I grew up in this area. This hospital has always been important to the community." "I see." Dr. Pierce leaned back in her chair. "You know, we're very proud of our staff here. Some have been with us for many years." "Like Nurse Cole?" Ethan asked, unable to help himself. Dr. Pierce's eyebrow raised slightly. "Yes. Alice has been with us for 15 years. One of our best nurses. Started here right after nursing school. Raised her son while working full-time and getting her master's degree. Quite impressive. Her son seems very accomplished as well," Ethan said carefully. "Ryan is exceptional. Graduated high school at 16, already in medical school. Alice has done an amazing job as a single mother." The word single mother hit Ethan like a physical blow. "She never married?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Dr. Pierce's eyes narrowed slightly. "Mr. Walsh, forgive me, but how exactly do you know Nurse Cole?" Ethan shifted in his chair. "We were friends in college." "I see." Dr. Pierce's tone made it clear she wasn't entirely convinced. "Well, to answer your question, no. Alice has devoted her life to her son and her career. She's turned down many opportunities to move up in administration because she wanted to stay hands-on with patients." Pride and guilt battled in Ethan's chest. Pride for the remarkable woman Alice had become. Guilt because she had done it all alone. Later that day, Ethan lingered in the hospital hallways, hoping for another glimpse of Alice or Ryan. As he passed the nurses' station, he overheard two women talking. "Did you see that man Alice was talking to this morning?" one asked. "The one in the expensive suit?" "No, who was he?" "I don't know, but the way they looked at each other. Definitely history there." The other nurse lowered her voice. "Alice never talks about Ryan's father. Just said he was a college sweetheart who disappeared before she knew she was pregnant. Well, whoever he was, he missed out. Ryan is such a great kid. Ethan walked away quickly, his heart pounding. He had missed everything. First steps, first words, first day of school, everything. As he turned the corner, he saw Ryan helping a young child with a cast on her arm. The little girl was crying, and Ryan knelt down to her level. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly. "I know it hurts, but you're being so brave." As he spoke, Ryan nervously tapped his fingers against his thigh in a specific pattern, 3 quick taps followed by 2 slower ones. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He did the exact same thing when he was concentrating or nervous. It was such a specific habit, one he'd never seen anyone else do, until now. The hospital was quieter in the evening. Most visitors had left, and the day shift was preparing to hand over to the night staff. Ethan had spent the day in meetings about his donation, but his mind was elsewhere. He found Alice in the staff lounge, alone, pouring herself a cup of coffee. She stiffened when she heard him enter. "Don't you have somewhere else to be?" she asked without turning around. "Some company to run, some meeting to attend." Ethan closed the door behind him. "Alice, we need to talk." She finally turned to face him, her eyes guarded. "About what?" "It's been 19 years, Ethan. There's nothing to say." "Is he mine?" The question came out before he could stop it. Alice froze, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she carefully set the cup down on the counter. "You don't get to ask that after 19 years, she replied, her voice steady but cold. "Please," Ethan said, stepping closer. "I need to know. Why? So you can disappear again?" Alice's composure cracked slightly. "So you can disrupt our lives and then go back to your penthouse and your millions?" "I didn't know," Ethan said quietly. "I swear I didn't know about him." Alice laughed bitterly. "Would it have made a difference? Your father made it very clear what would happen if you stayed with me. Your future was more important than our relationship. Why would a baby have changed that?" Before Ethan could respond, the door opened, and a nurse stuck her head in. "Alice, Dr. Matthews needs you in room 415. Alice nodded, composed herself quickly, and walked to the door. As she passed Ethan, she paused. "Stay away from my son," she whispered, then left. Ethan remained in the lounge, the question still burning in his mind. But deep down, he already had his answer. Alice's hands were shaking as she checked the patient's vital signs. Seeing Ethan after all these years had brought back feelings she thought she had buried long ago. For 19 years, she had built a life without him. She had discovered she was pregnant just 2 weeks after their breakup. She had tried to call him, but he had changed his number. She had gone to his apartment, but he had moved out. She had been alone, scared, and heartbroken. But she had been strong, for Ryan, always for Ryan. Hours later, Alice finally made it home to their small but cozy apartment. Ryan was at the kitchen table, textbooks spread out in front of him, his laptop open to medical diagrams. "Hey, Mom," he said without looking up. "There's leftover pasta in the fridge if you're hungry." Alice smiled, watching her son. He had Ethan's focus when he worked, the way his brow furrowed in concentration. But he had her kindness, her empathy. He was the best of both of them. "Thanks, honey. How was your day?" Ryan shrugged. "Good. Busy. Met that strange investor guy you were talking to." Alice's heart skipped a beat. "Mr. Walsh? What did you think of him?" "Seemed nice enough. Kind of intense, though. Kept staring at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle." Ryan looked up from his books. "How do you know him again?" "We were in college together," Alice said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Huh. Small world." Ryan turned back to his studies. "By the way, I'm thinking of applying for that new mentorship program Dr. Pierce mentioned, the one being funded by some tech company. Could look good on my residency applications." Alice felt a chill. Was this Ethan's doing already? "We'll talk about it," she said, heading to her room. "Don't stay up too late." Once alone, Alice sat on the edge of her bed and let the tears come. All these years, she had protected Ryan from the truth. She had never told him that his father had chosen ambition over love, that his grandfather had threatened to destroy her career if she tried to contact Ethan again. She had told Ryan that his father wasn't in the picture, but that he had been a good man, a college sweetheart. Better for Ryan to think his father simply wasn't ready for a family than to know he had been rejected because of who his mother was. And now Ethan was back, asking questions, looking at Ryan with those piercing blue eyes, the same eyes he had passed down to their son. "What am I going to do?" she whispered to the empty room. Across the city, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse, a glass of scotch in his hand. On the coffee table in front of him was an old photo album he hadn't looked at in years. He flipped through the pages until he found what he was looking for, A picture of him and Alice at a campus picnic, her smiling face pressed against his, her curly hair blowing in the breeze. They looked so young, so happy, so unaware of what was to come. Ethan traced Alice's face with his finger. "He has my eyes," he whispered to the photograph. "My son has my eyes." The next morning, Ethan sat in his office at Walsh Tech, staring at his computer screen without seeing it. His mind was at Mercy General Hospital, with Alice, with Ryan, with his son. His assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Walsh, your 10 o'clock is here." "Cancel it," Ethan said without looking up. "Cancel everything today." "Sir, I'm going to the hospital. The donation." 20 minutes later, Ethan was back at Mercy General. But this time he wasn't there to see Alice or Ryan. He had a different mission. He smiled at the administrator he was meeting with. "I just want to make sure my donation is going to the right programs. Could I see some files on the current internship program, the success stories?" The administrator beamed. "Of course, Mr. Walsh. We're so grateful for your interest." Soon Ethan was alone in an office with several files. He quickly found what he was looking for, Ryan's internship application. His hands trembled as he opened it. There was Ryan's full name, Ryan Daniel Cole. No middle name connection to Ethan, but still, seeing his son's name in print made his heart skip. Then he saw the birth date and his world stopped. February 15th, exactly 9 months after his last night with Alice. Ethan leaned back in his chair, the confirmation hitting him like a physical blow. He had a son who had grown up without him, a son who didn't know he existed. He closed the file, his decision made. He might have missed 19 years, but he wouldn't miss another day if he could help it. Dr. Pierce looked surprised when Ethan returned to her office later that day. "Mr. Walsh back so soon?" "I've been thinking about my donation," Ethan said, sitting down across from her. "I'd like to do more than just write a check. I want to create a mentorship program for your interns. Pair them with professionals in their fields of interest." Dr. Pierce raised an eyebrow. "That's an interesting proposal. I'd like to be personally involved. I have connections in medical technology that could be valuable to certain interns." "Such as?" Ethan tried to keep his voice casual. "I noticed in the files that you have an intern named Ryan Cole who's interested in medical technology. I could mentor him directly." Dr. Pierce's eyes narrowed slightly. "Mr. Walsh, forgive me for being direct, but what is your interest in the Cole family?" Ethan hadn't expected such a straightforward question. He hesitated. "Alice and I were close in college," he finally said. "We lost touch. I'd like to make up for lost time." Dr. Pierce studied him for a long moment. "Does she know you're doing this?" "Not yet." "I see." Dr. Pierce sighed. "Mr. Walsh, Alice Cole is one of the most dedicated nurses I've ever worked with. Ryan is her whole world. If you're planning to disrupt their lives—" "I'm not," Ethan said quickly. "I just want to help, please." Dr. Pierce was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. "I'll approve the program. But Mr. Walsh, tread carefully. Those two have been through a lot." Alice stormed into the hospital cafe where Ethan sat drinking coffee. Her eyes blazed with anger as she slammed her hands on the table. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded in a harsh whisper. Ethan looked up calmly. "Having coffee?" "Don't play games with me, Ethan. Dr. Pierce told me about your new mentorship program, with you personally mentoring Ryan. It's a good opportunity for him," Ethan said. "Medical technology is the future." "Stay away from him," Alice said, her voice shaking. "You don't get to walk back into our lives after 19 years and act like nothing happened." "I'm not acting like nothing happened," Ethan replied, his voice low but intense. "I'm trying to make up for lost time." "Lost time?" Alice laughed bitterly. "You chose to lose that time, Ethan. You chose your father's money over me, over us." "I didn't know about Ryan," Ethan insisted. "You never told me you were pregnant." Alice's eyes flashed. "I tried. I called you for weeks. Your number was disconnected. I went to your apartment. You'd moved out. I even went to your father's house, and do you know what he said to me?" Ethan felt cold. "What?" "He said if I contacted you again, he would make sure I never worked in any hospital in the state, that he would ruin my career before it even started." Alice's voice cracked. "I had a baby on the way and dreams of being a nurse. What choice did I have?" Ethan stared at her in shock. "My father threatened you. I never knew that. Would it have made a difference?" Alice asked, suddenly tired. Ethan wanted to say yes, but he couldn't be sure. At 20, faced with his father's disapproval and the responsibility of a child, he didn't know what he would have done. "I want to know my son, Alice," he said quietly. "Please." Alice stood straight, composing herself. "Ryan is my son. I raised him. I was there for every fever, every nightmare, every triumph. You don't get to walk in now and play daddy because it suddenly fits your schedule." She turned to leave, then stopped and looked back. "If you really care about him, you'll leave him alone. Don't confuse him, don't make promises you won't keep." As Alice walked away, Ethan called after her. "I'm not going anywhere this time, Alice. I'm staying." Despite Alice's objections, Dr. Pierce approved the mentorship program. Ryan was thrilled to be paired with a successful tech entrepreneur, and Alice felt like she was watching a car crash in slow motion. The first meeting between Ethan and Ryan happened in the hospital conference room. Alice stood outside, peeking through the window, her heart in her throat. Inside, Ethan and Ryan sat across from each other, talking animatedly about the future of AI and medicine. The software could recognize patterns that doctors might miss, Ethan was saying, his hands moving as he explained, saving crucial time in emergency situations. Ryan nodded eagerly. "But what about privacy concerns? Patient data is sensitive." Ethan smiled, pride evident in his eyes. "Excellent question. That's exactly what we need to address." Alice watched as her son soaked up knowledge from his father, neither of them aware of the connection they shared. Ryan had Ethan's quick mind, his way of seeing problems from unusual angles. Watching them together was both beautiful and painful. Dr. Pierce appeared beside her. They seemed to be hitting it off. "He'll hurt him," Alice said quietly. "When Ryan finds out the truth, he'll be devastated." Dr. Pierce put a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe, or maybe this is a chance for healing. For all of you." Alice shook her head. "You don't know Ethan like I do." "Maybe not," Dr. Pierce agreed. "But I know people can change in 19 years. Maybe it's time to find out if he has." Over the next few weeks, Ryan spent several hours a week with Ethan, learning about medical technology and business ethics. He came home excited, full of stories about what he was learning. "Mr. Walsh says I have a natural talent for seeing connections others miss," Ryan told Alice one evening as they ate dinner. "He thinks I could do really well in medical research." Alice forced a smile. "That's great, honey. He's not what I expected from a tech millionaire," Ryan continued, not noticing his mother's discomfort. "He actually cares about helping people, not just making money." Alice poked at her food. "You sound impressed." "I am," Ryan admitted. "He's really smart, but also kind of, I don't know, sad sometimes, like he's lost something important." Alice looked up sharply. "What makes you say that?" Ryan shrugged. "Just a feeling. Sometimes he gets this faraway look in his eyes, especially when he talks about the past." Alice changed the subject quickly, but Ryan's words stayed with her. Was Ethan genuinely remorseful? Did he really regret the choices he'd made? It didn't matter, she told herself. The past was the past. She had built a good life for herself and Ryan without Ethan Walsh. They didn't need him now. But as she washed the dishes that night, Alice couldn't help but remember the way Ethan had looked at her in the hospital cafe, like she was still the most important person in his world. A week later, Alice found herself working with Ethan directly. A funding issue had threatened to delay the internship program, and Dr. Pierce had asked Alice to help resolve it. "I don't understand why I need to be involved," Alice protested. "Because you're the pediatric department's budget coordinator," Dr. Pierce said firmly, "and because you need to learn to work with Mr. Walsh if this program is going to succeed." So Alice found herself in a small office with Ethan, going over budgets and timelines. The space seemed too small for both of them, the air charged with unspoken words. "We could shift funds from the technology budget to cover the shortfall," Ethan suggested, pointing to a line on the spreadsheet. "No," Alice said sharply. "Those funds are earmarked for new monitoring equipment in the NICU. Then I'll cover the difference personally." Alice looked up from the papers. "We don't need your money, Ethan. This isn't about you and me," Ethan said, frustration edging into his voice. "This is about keeping a program going that helps students like Ryan. Don't pretend this is about anyone but Ryan," Alice shot back. "Fine," Ethan said, standing up. "It is about Ryan, my son, the son I never knew I had because my father threatened you, and I was too much of a coward to fight for what mattered." The confession hung in the air between them. Alice stared at him, seeing for the first time the pain etched in the lines around his eyes. "You really didn't know?" she asked softly. "I swear to you," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "If I had known about Ryan, I would have—" "What? Defied your father? Given up your dreams?" Alice shook her head. "We'll never know, will we?" Ethan sat back down, suddenly looking tired. "No, we won't. But I'm here now, Alice, and I'm trying to do the right thing." Alice studied his face. The boyish charm she had fallen for in college had matured into something deeper. His eyes were the same piercing blue, Ryan's eyes, but they held shadows she'd never seen before. "Why now?" she asked. "Why after all these years?" "Because seeing him, seeing you, made me realize what I've been missing all this time." Ethan's voice was soft. Success means nothing when you have no one to share it with. Before Alice could respond, the lights flickered and went out. A summer storm had knocked out power to the hospital. The emergency generators kicked in immediately, but they only covered critical areas. The administrative wing where Alice and Ethan were working remained dark. "Stay here," Alice said, standing up. "I need to check on my patients." "I'm coming with you," Ethan insisted, pulling out his phone and turning on the flashlight. They made their way down the darkened hallway. In the pediatric ward, some children were crying, scared of the sudden darkness. Alice moved efficiently from room to room, comforting and reassuring. In one room, a little girl about 5 years old was sobbing. "I want my mommy. It's too dark." Alice sat on the edge of her bed. "Your mum will be back soon, Lily. She just went to get some dinner. But guess what? I brought a friend who's really good at flashlight stories." She looked at Ethan expectantly. "Flashlight stories?" he asked. "You know," Alice prompted, "where you make shadow puppets on the wall and tell a story." Ethan hesitated, then stepped forward. "Well, Lily, did you ever hear about the brave little bunny who wasn't afraid of the dark?" He positioned his phone's flashlight and made a rabbit shape with his hand, casting a shadow on the wall. The little girl's sobs quieted as she watched, fascinated. "The brave bunny knew that the dark was just the world playing hide-and-seek," Ethan continued, making the bunny hop across the wall. "And if you were patient enough, the light would always come back." Alice watched in amazement as Ethan entertained not just Lily, but all the children in the ward with his shadow puppets and gentle stories. She had never seen this side of him before. Patient, kind, creative. It reminded her of the way Ryan would sit for hours with his younger cousins, never too busy to answer their endless questions. When the power finally came back on an hour later, the children groaned in disappointment. "One more story, please," Lily begged. Ethan smiled. "Next time, I promise." As they left the ward, Alice found herself looking at Ethan with new eyes. "You were good with them," she said quietly. "I had a lot of time to practice," Ethan replied. "My company runs a summer camp for kids with serious illnesses. I volunteer there every year." "Why?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "When I was building my company, I was focused on success, on proving to my father that I could make it on my own. Then one day I realized I had everything I thought I wanted, and I was still empty inside." They stopped walking, standing alone in the hallway. "The camp was my way of trying to give something back," Ethan continued, "to find some meaning." Alice looked into his eyes and saw something she hadn't allowed herself to see before: regret, loneliness, and a desperate desire to make things right. For just a moment she felt the old pull between them, the connection that had never fully broken. Then the moment passed, and Alice stepped back. "I should go check on the other wards." "Alice," Ethan called as she walked away, "thank you for raising such an amazing son." She paused but didn't look back. "I didn't do it for you, Ethan. I did it for him." 2 nights later, a late shift at the hospital turned dangerous. An elderly patient needed to be moved during a minor flood from a burst pipe. The elevator malfunctioned between floors, and Ethan, who had stayed late to work with Ryan, jumped in to help. As Ryan and Ethan carefully guided the patient's gurney through the emergency exit of the stuck elevator, a ceiling panel came loose. "Look out!" Ethan shouted, pushing Ryan aside and taking the brunt of the falling debris. A sharp edge caught his arm, tearing through his expensive suit jacket and cutting deep. "Mr. Walsh!" Ryan exclaimed, rushing to his side once the patient was safe. "You're bleeding!" Ethan looked down at his arm, surprised by the amount of blood. "It's nothing." "That's not nothing," Ryan insisted. "You need stitches. Come on, I'll take you to the ER." Despite Ethan's protests, Ryan led him to the emergency room, and that's how Alice found them. Ryan carefully helping Ethan, who looked pale but was smiling at something Ryan had said. "What happened?" Alice asked, rushing over. "Ceiling panel in the elevator," Ryan explained. "He pushed me out of the way, probably saved me from getting a concussion." Alice's eyes met Ethan's. "Let me see." She examined the wound with gentle, professional fingers. "You'll need stitches." "I told him it wasn't a big deal," Ethan said. 8 stitches isn't a big deal?" Alice raised an eyebrow. "Sit down and let me clean this." As she worked on his arm, Ethan couldn't help but notice how close she was. The familiar scent of her coconut shampoo, the slight furrow between her eyebrows when she concentrated, the softness of her hands as she carefully cleaned and stitched his wound. You didn't have to push Ryan out of the way, she said quietly. Yes, I did, Ethan replied simply. Alice looked up, meeting his eyes. For a moment, they weren't nurse and patient or even estranged ex-lovers. They were just two people who once meant everything to each other. Thank you, she whispered. Ethan nodded, not trusting his voice. Her hands lingered on his arm a moment longer than necessary before she stepped back. All done, she said, her professional tone returning. Keep it clean and dry. Come back in a week to have the stitches removed. I'll make sure he does, Ryan promised, appearing beside them. Thanks, Mom. As Ryan helped Ethan fill out paperwork, Alice watched them together, father and son, so alike in so many ways. Both stubborn, both intelligent, both willing to put themselves in harm's way for others, and both completely unaware of the truth that connected them. 2 days later, Ryan stopped by Alice's apartment to pick up a homemade dinner she had promised him. Between his internship, mentorship with Ethan, and summer classes, he barely had time to eat, let alone cook. Mom, you here? Ryan called as he let himself in. In the shower, Alice called back. Dinner's in the fridge. Ryan went to the kitchen and found a container of his favorite pasta. As he waited for his mother, he noticed a pile of old photo albums on the coffee table. Alice had mentioned she was organizing old pictures for a family reunion next month. Curious, Ryan sat down and opened the top album. Baby pictures of himself, first day of school, soccer games, always just him and his mother. Occasionally his grandmother or Alice's best friend Jennifer, who was like an aunt to him, but never his father. Ryan had asked about his father a few times growing up. Alice always gave the same answer. He was a good man, a college sweetheart, but he wasn't ready for a family. She never spoke badly of him, but she never shared many details either. Ryan flipped through several albums, tracing the story of his life through photographs. Then he came to an older album, labeled simply College. Here was his mother as a young woman, her smile bright, her eyes full of dreams. Pictures of her with roommates at parties, studying in the library. And then he saw it, a photo that made his heart stop. His mother at a campus picnic, smiling broadly, her arms wrapped around a young man with dark hair and piercing blue eyes. Eyes that Ryan saw every morning in the mirror. Ethan Walsh. The resemblance was undeniable. Same jawline, same eyes, same way of tilting his head slightly when he smiled. Ryan stared at the picture for a long time, pieces falling into place. The way Ethan looked at him sometimes, like he was trying to memorize his face, the similarities everyone commented on, the strange tension between Ethan and his mother. Ryan, did you find the pasta? Alice's voice came from the hallway as she emerged from the bathroom, towel drying her hair. She froze when she saw what Ryan was looking at. Ryan held up the photo, his hand shaking slightly. He's my father, isn't he? Alice's silence was all the confirmation he needed. The photo trembled in Ryan's hand. The smiling couple stared back at him, his mother, young and carefree, and the man he now knew as his mentor, Ethan Walsh, his father. How long were you going to keep this from me? Ryan's voice was barely above a whisper. Alice set her towel down slowly and moved toward her son. Ryan, I can explain. Explain what? Ryan's voice rose. That my mentor is actually my father, that you've both been lying to me for weeks, or that you've been lying to me my whole life. I never lied about who your father was, Alice said carefully. I told you he was my college sweetheart. But you never told me his name. Ryan stood up, the photo album falling to the floor with a thud. You never told me he was Ethan Walsh, tech millionaire, and now he's back, pretending to be my mentor, and you're just, what, going along with it? Alice reached for him, but Ryan stepped back. Did he know? When he started the mentorship program, did he know I was his son? Alice nodded slowly. Yes, he figured it out when he first saw you at the hospital. Ryan laughed bitterly. So this whole thing, the mentorship, the career advice, it was all just a way for him to get to know his secret son without having to tell the truth. It's complicated, Ryan. No, it's not, Ryan shouted. It's actually pretty simple. He left you, he didn't want us. And now, 19 years later, he's decided we're worth his time. Alice's eyes flashed. That's not fair. You don't know the whole story. Then tell me, Ryan demanded. Tell me why my father wasn't there for my first word, my first step, my graduation. Tell me why he never sent a birthday card or called on Christmas. Tell me why he didn't want me. Tears filled Alice's eyes. It wasn't like that, Ryan. Then what was it like, Mom? Ryan's voice cracked. Because from where I'm standing, he chose his fancy life over us. Alice sat down heavily on the couch, the fight suddenly gone from her. Sit down, Ryan, please. There are things you need to know, things I should have told you a long time ago. Ryan hesitated, then slowly sat across from her, the coffee table between them. "Ethan and I met sophomore year of college," Alice began, her voice soft with memory. "We were so different. Me from my working-class neighborhood, him from old money. But none of that mattered when we were together. For 2 years, we were inseparable." Ryan listened silently, his face unreadable. "Then his father found out about us," Alice continued. "Daniel Walsh was, well, he had very specific ideas about who was good enough for his son, and I wasn't it." "Because you're black," Ryan said flatly. Alice nodded. "That was part of it. Also because I didn't come from money. Didn't have the right connections." "So Ethan broke up with you because his daddy told him to?" Ryan's voice was hard. "It wasn't that simple," Alice sighed. "Daniel threatened to cut Ethan off completely. No more tuition, no connections to start his company. Ethan was young and ambitious. He had dreams. Dreams that didn't include us." "He didn't know about you, Ryan," Alice said gently. "When we broke up, I didn't know I was pregnant yet. When I found out, I tried to contact him. His number was disconnected. He'd moved out of his apartment." Ryan frowned. "You could have tried harder." "I did," Alice said, her eyes meeting his. "I went to his father's house. Daniel Walsh told me that if I contacted Ethan again, he would make sure I never worked in any hospital in the state, that he would ruin my career before it even started." Her voice cracked. "I was 20 years old, pregnant, trying to finish nursing school. I had to think about what was best for us, for you." Ryan was quiet for a long moment, processing his mother's words. "Why didn't you ever tell me this before?" "Because I didn't want you to feel unwanted," Alice said, wiping away a tear. "I didn't want you to think your father rejected you. It was easier to say he wasn't ready for a family than to explain that his father threatened us. Does Ethan know about what his father did?" Alice shook her head. "He says he didn't. I only told him recently." Ryan stood up and began pacing the small living room. "So all these years he had no idea I existed, and now he's just, what, trying to make up for lost time?" "I think so," Alice said. "He seems genuinely sorry, Ryan." "Sorry doesn't make up for 19 years, Ryan snapped. "Sorry doesn't change the fact that I grew up without a father." "No, it doesn't," Alice agreed. "Nothing can change the past, but you have a chance now to know your father, if you want to." Ryan stopped pacing and stared at his mother. "Do you want me to, after everything his family did to us?" Alice took a deep breath. "I want you to make your own choice. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." Ryan picked up his keys from the counter. "I need to think. I need some space." "Where are you going?" Alice asked, worry creasing her brow. "I don't know," Ryan admitted. "Just don't wait up." As the door closed behind her son, Alice picked up the fallen photo album. She traced Ethan's face in the old photograph, wondering how different their lives might have been if Daniel Walsh hadn't interfered, if she and Ethan had been stronger, braver, if they had fought for their love instead of giving up. Ethan was working late in his penthouse when his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number. "Ethan Walsh. It's Ryan." The voice was tense, angry. Ethan sat up straight, his heart pounding. "Ryan, is everything okay?" "No, everything is not okay." Ryan's voice shook slightly. "I know who you are. I know you're my father." Ethan closed his eyes, his worst fear realized. "Ryan, I can explain—" "Save it," Ryan cut him off. "I don't want explanations. I want answers. Meet me at the hospital rooftop terrace. 20 minutes. The line went dead before Ethan could respond. The hospital rooftop terrace was quiet at night, the city lights spreading out below like fallen stars. Ryan stood at the railing, looking out over the view when Ethan arrived. "Ryan," Ethan said softly, approaching carefully as if his son might bolt. Ryan didn't turn around. 19 years, he said, his voice flat. "That's how long you've been gone." "I didn't know about you," Ethan said, stopping a few feet away. "I swear to you I didn't know you existed until I saw you with your mother in the hospital lobby." "And what? You couldn't just tell me the truth?" Ryan finally turned to face him, his blue eyes, Ethan's eyes, flashing with anger. "You had to play games? Pretend to be my mentor?" "I wanted to tell you," Ethan said. "But your mother—" "Don't blame this on her," Ryan snapped. "She protected me my whole life. She made sure I never felt unwanted, even though your family made it clear we weren't good enough for you." Ethan flinched. "It wasn't like that, Ryan." "No? Then what was it like? Why weren't you there? Why did she have to raise me alone?" The pain in Ryan's voice cut through Ethan like a knife. This was his son, his flesh and blood, looking at him with hurt and betrayal. How could he explain choices he'd made when he was barely more than a kid himself? "I made a mistake," Ethan admitted, his voice breaking. The biggest mistake of my life. I let my father's expectations and my own ambition come before what really mattered. Before your mother. Before what could have been. Your father didn't want you with my mom because she's black, Ryan said bluntly, and you went along with it. Ethan couldn't deny it. My father was wrong. I was wrong to listen to him. I was young and scared and stupid. And now? Ryan asked, his eyes searching Ethan's face. Why come back now? What do you want from us? A chance, Ethan said simply. A chance to know my son. A chance to make things right with your mother. I don't expect forgiveness, Ryan. I haven't earned it. But I'm asking for a chance. Ryan shook his head, turning back to look out over the city. I don't know if I can give you that. I understand, Ethan said quietly. But I want you to know something. Whether you give me that chance or not, I'm proud of you, Ryan. You're smart, compassionate, driven. You're going to be an amazing doctor. And that's all because of your mother. She did an incredible job raising you. Ryan was silent for a long moment. Then, without looking back, he said, I'm quitting the internship program tomorrow. Ethan's heart sank. Ryan, please don't do that. This is a great opportunity for your career. I can't work with you, Ryan said firmly. Not now. Maybe not ever. Then I'll step back, Ethan said quickly. I'll have someone else take over your mentorship, but don't give up on the program because of me. Ryan finally turned back. Why do you care so much? Because I care about you, Ethan said simply. Because I want what's best for you, even if that doesn't include me. Something flashed in Ryan's eyes. Surprise, confusion, a flicker of doubt. I need time, he finally said, to think, to process all of this. Ethan nodded. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere this time, Ryan, I promise. As Ryan walked away, Ethan stood alone on the rooftop, the weight of 19 years of absence heavy on his shoulders. He had found his son only to lose him all over again, and this time, the pain was 1,000 times worse because he knew exactly what he was losing. Alice was still awake when Ryan came home hours later. She sat in the dimly lit living room, a cup of cold tea on the table in front of her. I talked to him, Ryan said without preamble, dropping onto the couch beside her. How did it go? Alice asked softly. About as well as you'd expect. Ryan sighed, leaning his head back. I told him I'm quitting the internship program. Alice sat up straighter. Ryan, no. That program is a great opportunity for you. I can't work with him, Mom, not after all this. He's not the only mentor in the program, Alice pointed out gently. Don't give up on something important to your future because of this. Ryan looked at his mother curiously. Why are you defending him after everything he did? Alice was quiet for a moment. I'm not defending him. I'm looking out for you. This internship is important for your medical school applications. It's more than that, Ryan insisted. Something's changed. The way you talk about him now is different. Alice sighed. Seeing Ethan again after all these years, it's complicated. He's not the same person he was at 20. So you're what? Forgiving him? Ryan asked incredulously. I don't know, Alice admitted. I'm trying to understand him, and I'm trying to be fair to you. You deserve to know your father, Ryan, if that's what you want. Ryan stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the night sky. I don't know what I want. All my life I've wondered about him, made up stories in my head about who he was, what he was like, and now he's here, and he's nothing like I imagined. In good ways or bad? Alice asked. Ryan shrugged. Both, I guess. He's smart. Driven. Actually seems to care about helping people, not just making money. He paused. He has my eyes, or I have his. Whatever. Alice smiled sadly. You have a lot more than his eyes, Ryan. You have his quick mind, his way of looking at problems from different angles, even that thing you do with your fingers when you're nervous. That's all him. Ryan looked down at his hands. I always thought I got that from you. No, that's pure Ethan Walsh, Alice said with a small laugh. The first time I saw you do it as a toddler, I nearly cried. Ryan came back to sit beside his mother. Do you think things might have been different if his father hadn't interfered? Alice's eyes grew distant. I'd like to think so. We loved each other very much once upon a time, but we were so young, Ryan, and love isn't always enough. Ryan leaned against his mother's shoulder, suddenly feeling like a little boy again. I'm so angry at him, Mom. But part of me wants to know him too. Is that crazy? Alice wrapped an arm around her son. No, honey, that's not crazy at all. That's human. The next morning, Ryan walked into the hospital with a heavy heart. He had barely slept, his mind racing with everything he had learned. As he approached the administration office to formally withdraw from the internship program, he saw Dr. Pierce standing in the hallway. Ryan, she called, beckoning him over. Do you have a minute? Ryan nodded, following her into her office. I heard about what happened, Dr. Pierce said without preamble. Alice told me you know about Ethan. Ryan tensed. Did everyone know except me? No, Dr. Pierce said firmly. Only your mother and I knew, and we were trying to protect you, Ryan. By keeping the truth from me? Dr. Pierce sighed. Sometimes adults make mistakes, even when they're trying to do the right thing. She studied him for a moment. Are you really quitting the program? Ryan looked down. I can't work with him, Dr. Pierce. I understand that, she said, but Mr. Walsh has already asked to be removed as your mentor. Dr. Sampson from Boston Children's Hospital has agreed to take his place. He's a leading researcher in pediatric neurology, your field of interest. Ryan looked up in surprise. Ethan did that. Dr. Pierce nodded. This morning, he said your career shouldn't suffer because of his mistakes. Ryan was silent, digesting this information. Ryan, Dr. Pierce said gently, I've known your mother since before you were born. I've watched her raise you, sacrifice for you, fight for you, and in all that time, she never spoke ill of your father. Do you know why? Ryan shook his head. Because she wanted you to form your own opinion of him if you ever met, Dr. Pierce said. She didn't want her pain to color your judgment. That takes a special kind of strength. Ryan swallowed hard. She's the strongest person I know. Yes, she is, Dr. Pierce agreed. And now you have a chance to know your father, to judge him for yourself, not based on the past, but on who he is now. She leaned forward. That doesn't mean you have to forgive him, Ryan. It just means you get to decide what kind of relationship you want with him, if any. Ryan sat quietly for a long moment. I'll stay in the program, he finally said. But I need time before I can talk to Ethan again. Dr. Pierce nodded. Take all the time you need. In the meantime, Dr. Sampson will be here next week to meet you. As Ryan left her office, a weight had lifted from his shoulders. He didn't have to make any big decisions today. He could take his time, figure things out step by step, and maybe, just maybe, find a way forward that included both his mother and the father he never knew. That evening, Alice was surprised by a knock at her apartment door. When she opened it, Ethan stood there looking exhausted but determined. Ethan, she said, startled. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you, he said. Please, Alice. 5 minutes. Alice hesitated, then stepped back to let him in. Ryan's not here. He's staying with a friend tonight. I know, Ethan said. I wanted to talk to you alone. Alice led him to the small living room. The apartment was modest but warm, filled with photos of Ryan at different ages, bookshelves overflowing with medical textbooks and novels, a worn but comfortable couch with colorful throw pillows. This is nice, Ethan said, looking around. It feels like a real home. It is a real home, Alice said, sitting down. It's not a penthouse, but it's ours. Ethan winced at the barb, but didn't argue. I deserve that. What do you want, Ethan? Alice asked tiredly. To apologize, he said, sitting across from her. Not just for the past, but for how I've handled things since coming back. I shouldn't have tried to get close to Ryan without telling him the truth. I should have been honest from the beginning. Yes, you should have, Alice agreed. But I'm not innocent in this either. I could have pushed you to tell him sooner. Part of me was afraid of what would happen when he knew. And now, the worst has happened, Ethan said softly. He hates me. He doesn't hate you, Alice corrected. He's hurt, confused, angry, but he doesn't hate you. I wouldn't blame him if he did, Ethan said, looking down at his hands. I've made so many mistakes, Alice. With you, with him, with us. The sincerity in his voice made Alice look at him more closely. The arrogant boy she had known in college was gone. In his place was a man who had achieved everything he thought he wanted, only to discover it wasn't enough. Why did you really come back, Ethan? She asked. After all these years? Ethan met her eyes. Because when I saw you in that hospital lobby, I realized that nothing in my life has ever felt as right as the time I spent with you. And when I saw Ryan, when I realized I had a son, everything shifted. All my priorities, all my plans, none of it mattered anymore. All that mattered was fixing what I broke, if that's even possible. Alice was quiet for a long moment. I don't know if it's possible, she finally said. Too much time has passed, too much hurt. I know, Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. But I have to try, Alice. I have to try to be the man you deserved back then, the father Ryan deserves now. They sat in silence, the weight of 19 years stretching between them. Then Alice stood up and walked to the kitchen. Would you like some wine? She asked. I think we could both use it. Ethan looked up in surprise. Yes, thank you. Alice poured 2 glasses of red wine and handed one to Ethan. Their fingers brushed, and for a moment they were 20 again, young and in love, with their whole lives ahead of them. "Tell me about him," Ethan said softly. "Tell me about raising our son." And so Alice did. She told him about Ryan's first steps, his first words, his first day of school. She told him about the time 4-year-old Ryan got lost in the grocery store and was found in the cereal aisle, calmly reading the nutritional information on the boxes, about the science fair projects and soccer games, about the day Ryan announced he wanted to be a doctor, just like the ones who had helped his friend after a bad fall. As the night wore on, they moved from wine to coffee, from Ryan's childhood to their own lives over the past 19 years. Ethan told her about building his company, about the emptiness of success without someone to share it with. Alice told him about the struggles of being a single mother, working full-time while getting her master's degree, the sacrifices and the triumphs. The sun was rising when they finally fell silent, exhausted but somehow lighter, as if sharing their separate journeys had eased a burden they had both carried too long. "I should go," Ethan said, standing up reluctantly. "I've kept you up all night." "It's okay," Alice said, walking him to the door. "It was nice talking to you." Ethan paused at the doorway, looking down at her with those piercing blue eyes that had once made her heart race. They still did, though she tried to ignore it. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "Not just about Ryan, about us." Alice hesitated. "I don't know if there is an us, Ethan. There's too much history, too much pain." "I know," he said. "But there's also 19 years of living to catch up on, and I'd like to know who Alice Cole became if you'll let me." Against her better judgment, Alice found herself nodding. "One step at a time, Ethan. That's all I can promise." It was enough. For now, it was enough. Several days passed. Ryan stayed with his friend Maya, needing space to process everything. Alice respected his need for distance, though she missed him terribly. Ethan kept his promise to step back, arranging for Dr. Sampson to take over Ryan's mentorship without making a fuss. Then, on a rainy Saturday morning, Ryan showed up at his mother's apartment with coffee and donuts. "Hey," he said, when Alice opened the door, looking surprised but delighted to see him. "Hey yourself," she said, pulling him into a hug. "I've missed you." "I missed you too," Ryan admitted, following her inside. "I brought breakfast." They sat at the small kitchen table, drinking coffee and eating donuts in comfortable silence. Finally, Ryan spoke. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said. "About Ethan, about you, about us." Alice set down her coffee cup. And I'm still angry," Ryan said honestly. "But I'm also curious about who he is, about where I come from." Alice nodded, waiting for him to continue. "I want to give him a chance," Ryan finally said. "Not as my mentor, as my father, I guess." Relief and a touch of fear washed over Alice's face. "Are you sure?" Ryan shrugged. "Not really. But I think I'll regret it if I don't try. Just, can you be there when I talk to him again?" "Of course," Alice promised, reaching across the table to squeeze her son's hand. "Whatever you need." "I was thinking, maybe dinner," Ryan suggested. "Here. Neutral territory, sort of." Alice smiled. "I think that's a great idea." "When?" "Tonight," Ryan asked hesitantly. "Before I lose my nerve?" Alice laughed softly. "Tonight it is. I'll call him." Ethan arrived at Alice's apartment that evening with a bottle of wine and a nervous expression. He had changed 3 times before coming, wanting to make a good impression but not appear too formal. He had finally settled on dark jeans and a light blue button-down shirt that Alice had once said matched his eyes. When Alice opened the door, she looked just as nervous as he felt. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi," he replied, handing her the wine. "Thank you for calling, for this chance." Alice nodded. It was Ryan's idea. That simple statement filled Ethan with hope. His son had initiated this. Maybe not all was lost. Ryan was in the kitchen, awkwardly setting the table when Ethan walked in. He looked up, his face guarded, but not hostile. "Hi," he said stiffly. "Hi, Ryan," Ethan replied, wanting desperately to hug his son, but knowing it was too soon. "Thank you for inviting me." Ryan nodded. "Mom's making pasta. It's pretty good." "I'm sure it is," Ethan said, smiling. "Can I help with anything?" "You can finish setting the table," Alice called from the stove. "Ryan, can you get the garlic bread out of the oven?" The simple domestic tasks eased some of the tension. By the time they sat down to eat, the atmosphere had shifted from painfully awkward to merely uncomfortable. "So," Alice said, after they had all filled their plates, "Ryan tells me Dr. Sampson is a great mentor. He's the best in pediatric neurology." Ethan confirmed. When I heard Ryan was interested in that field, I knew he'd be perfect. Ryan looked up in surprise. You arranged that match specifically for me? Ethan nodded. I have some connections in medical research. When I realized I needed to step back as your mentor, I wanted to make sure you got someone who could really help your career. That was thoughtful, Ryan admitted reluctantly. It was the least I could do, Ethan said. Your future is important, Ryan. I don't want my mistakes to hold you back in any way. Ryan studied Ethan for a moment. Why medical technology? For your company, I mean. You could have gone into any field. My mother died of cancer when I was 12, Ethan said, his voice soft with old pain. The doctors couldn't do anything to save her. I always thought, if they'd had better tools, better technology, maybe things would have been different. Ryan's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry about your mom. Thank you, Ethan said. She would have loved you, you know. She was kind like you, smart, always saw the best in people. Unlike your father, Ryan said, a touch of bitterness in his voice. Ethan didn't flinch from the accusation. My father is a complicated man. What he did to your mother was wrong. What he did to us was wrong. I should have been stronger, braver. I should have stood up to him. But you didn't, Ryan said. No, I didn't, Ethan agreed. And I've regretted it every day since. The honesty in Ethan's voice seemed to reach Ryan. His rigid posture relaxed slightly. Do you still talk to him? Your father? Ethan shook his head. Not really. After I started my company without his help, we had a falling out. I see him at Christmas, sometimes Thanksgiving, that's about it. Does he know about me? Ryan asked, his voice smaller now. No, Ethan said. I haven't told him yet. But I will, if that's what you want. Ryan seemed to consider this. I don't know what I want. That's okay, Ethan said gently. There's no rush, Ryan. We can figure this out together, at your pace. Alice watched the exchange with mixed emotions. Seeing Ryan and Ethan together, talking, finding their way toward understanding, filled her with both joy and fear. Joy that her son might finally know his father. Fear that Ethan might hurt them both again. As if reading her thoughts, Ethan turned to her. I meant what I said the other night, Alice. I'm not going anywhere this time, not unless you both want me to. The sincerity in his eyes made her heart ache with memories and possibilities. Pass the garlic bread? Ryan asked, breaking the moment. And just like that, they were eating dinner together. Not quite a family yet, but something beginning to form, something fragile and new and full of hope. As the meal progressed, the conversation gradually became easier. Ryan asked Ethan about his company. Ethan asked Ryan about medical school. Alice shared funny stories about the hospital. Laughter began to break through the tension, like sunshine after a storm. By the time they were clearing the plates, a tentative peace had settled over the apartment. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. As Ryan gave Ethan a somewhat reluctant tour of their small home, showing him his old room with its medical textbooks and childhood trophies, Alice watched them from the doorway, father and son, so alike in so many ways, finding their way toward each other after 19 years apart. It wouldn't be easy. There would be more difficult conversations, more pain to work through, more trust to build. But seeing them together, Alice allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to be a family after all, even if it looked nothing like the one she had once dreamed of. Weeks passed. Summer turned warm, and the air hung heavy with promise. At the hospital, Ryan continued his internship under Dr. Sampson's guidance. He was learning fast, his natural talent shining through. Meanwhile, a fragile peace had formed between him and Ethan. They weren't close yet. Ryan still kept his distance, careful with his trust, but twice a week they would meet for lunch in the hospital cafe. Sometimes they talked about medicine, sometimes about Ryan's studies, sometimes about nothing important at all. Small steps towards something neither could yet name. Alice watched them cautiously, like a gardener tending to delicate seedlings. She wanted them to connect, to heal, but part of her still feared what might happen if Ethan walked away again. One evening, she found Ethan in the hospital hallway, looking at the bulletin board outside the pediatric ward. He wasn't dressed in his usual expensive suit, but casual clothes, jeans, and a simple button-down shirt. Ethan, what are you doing here? I thought you and Ryan had lunch yesterday. Ethan turned, looking slightly embarrassed. We did. I'm not here to see Ryan. He gestured to a flyer on the board. I was checking out the volunteer program for the children's ward. Alice raised her eyebrows in surprise. You want to volunteer with sick kids? Ethan shrugged. I'm good with them. Remember that night during the power outage? Besides, I have time on my hands these days. My company practically runs itself. Alice studied him, puzzled by this new side of Ethan Walsh. Most millionaires golf when they're bored, or buy sports teams. Ethan smiled. I never liked golf, and I'm terrible at sports. I remember, Alice said, a small smile playing at her lips. You couldn't catch a frisbee to save your life. Hey, I've improved it slightly. Ethan laughed, then grew serious. I just want to do something that matters, Alice. Something real. Before she could respond, her phone rang. Alice checked the screen, frowning. I need to take this, she said, stepping away. The call was brief, but when she returned to Ethan, her face was troubled. What's wrong? He asked immediately. Nothing, just work stuff. Ethan didn't believe her. Alice, I've known you since we were 19. I can tell when something's bothering you. Alice sighed. It was the nursing home. My mother's not doing well. Her Alzheimer's is getting worse. I didn't know about your mom, Ethan said softly. I'm sorry. It's been a slow decline for years, Alice explained. She barely recognizes me now. And Ryan, she thinks he's a nice young doctor who comes to visit her. Ethan hesitated, then asked, Is there anything I can do? The simple offer, free of grand gestures or flashy solutions, touched Alice more than she expected. No, but thank you for asking, she said. It's just hard watching someone you love slip away piece by piece. Ethan nodded, understanding in his eyes. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'll keep that in mind, Alice said, surprised to find she meant it. The following week, Ethan was in a meeting when his phone rang. He normally wouldn't answer, but something made him check the screen. It was his father's nurse. Excuse me, he told the others at the table. I need to take this. Stepping into the hallway, Ethan answered. This is Ethan Walsh. Mr. Walsh, this is Nurse Martinez from your father's house. I'm afraid he's collapsed. The ambulance is taking him to Mercy General Hospital now. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. What happened? It appears to be heart failure, sir. He was having trouble breathing, then lost consciousness. The paramedic stabilized him but said it's serious. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. His relationship with his father was complicated at best, hostile at worst, but Daniel Walsh was still his father. I'll be there as soon as I can, thank you for calling. Ethan arrived at the hospital emergency room to find his father already admitted. A doctor was waiting to speak with him. Mr. Walsh, I'm Dr. Patel. Your father has suffered congestive heart failure. His condition is stable for now, but I'm concerned about the overall weakness of his heart. What's the prognosis? Ethan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Dr. Patel's expression was grave. It's difficult to say. At his age, with his history of heart problems, we'll do everything we can, but you should prepare yourself. Ethan nodded. Can I see him? He's resting now, but yes. Room 412. Daniel Walsh looked small in the hospital bed. At 68, he had always seemed larger than life, imposing, authoritative, unmovable. Now, hooked up to monitors and IVs, his skin had a grayish tint. His white hair, usually perfectly combed, lay limp against the pillow. Ethan approached the bed slowly, conflicting emotions churning inside him. This man had shaped his life in so many ways, some good, many bad. He had pushed Ethan to excel, to achieve, to never settle for less than the best, but he had also forced him to give up the woman he loved, had cost him 19 years with his son. As if sensing his presence, Daniel's eyes fluttered open. Ethan, he said, his voice weak. You came. Of course I came, Ethan replied, sitting in the chair beside the bed. Daniel's eyes roamed the room. Mercy General, good hospital, the best, Ethan agreed. They're taking good care of you. Daniel tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. Don't think it'll matter much this time, son, Ethan frowned. Don't talk like that. You'll pull through. Maybe, maybe not. Daniel's breathing was labored. Either way, there are things I need to say to you, things I should have said years ago. Ethan tensed. Dad, you should rest. No time for rest now. Daniel reached for Ethan's hand. I was wrong, son, about so many things, but especially about that girl. Your girl. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Alice. Alice, Daniel repeated. I thought I was protecting you, thought she wasn't good enough, but I was wrong. So wrong. He coughed weakly. I saw what you became without her. Successful, yes. Rich, yes. But not happy. Never happy. Ethan couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. Is she still here? At this hospital? Daniel asked. Ethan nodded. She's a nurse. Pediatrics. Daniel's eyes widened. She made it through nursing school. Good for her. He paused, drawing a labored breath. I threatened her, you know. Told her I'd ruin her career if she tried to contact you. I know, Ethan said, his voice hardening. She told me. I'm not proud of it, Daniel admitted. I thought I was doing what was best for you, for the family name. He squeezed Ethan's hand weakly. I want to see her, to apologize, if she'll let me. Ethan hesitated, the thought of bringing Alice face to face with his father after all these years. I'll ask her, he finally said. But I can't promise anything. Daniel nodded, closing his eyes. And the boy? Your son? Is he here too? Ethan froze. How did you know about Ryan? Do the math, son, Daniel said, a hint of his old sharpness returning. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. When I saw you in the papers a few weeks ago announcing that mentorship program at this particular hospital, I knew something was up. Did some digging. He opened his eyes again, meeting Ethan's gaze. He looks like you, has your eyes. Ethan stood up, anger flaring. You have no right to talk about him, not after what you did. You're right, Daniel agreed, surprising Ethan. I don't, but I'd like to meet my grandson before I die, to apologize to him too, for robbing him of a father. Ethan stared at his father, torn between long-held resentment and the undeniable reality of Daniel's frailty. This might be his father's last chance to make amends. I'll talk to Ryan, Ethan said finally. But again, it's his choice. I won't pressure him. Daniel nodded, seeming satisfied. That's fair, more than fair. As Ethan left the room, his mind was spinning. How would he tell Alice? How would he tell Ryan? Would they even want to know that Daniel Walsh was in the hospital? Much less visit him? And why, after so many years, did his father suddenly want to make amends? Ethan found Alice at the nurse's station, reviewing patient charts. Her face registered surprise when she saw him. Ethan, what are you doing here? Ryan's in class today. I know, Ethan said. I'm not here for Ryan. My father was brought in an hour ago. Heart failure. Alice's expression changed from surprise to concern. Is he going to be okay? They're not sure, Ethan admitted. But Alice, he's asking to see you. And Ryan. Alice stiffened. Why would I want to see the man who threatened to destroy my career, who kept you from your son for 19 years? He wants to apologize, Ethan said. He says he was wrong about you, about us. Alice laughed without humor. Now that he's facing his mortality, he wants forgiveness? That's convenient. I know, Ethan acknowledged, and you have every right to refuse, but I thought you should know. Alice was quiet for a moment, internal conflict evident on her face. I'll think about it, she finally said, but I'm not promising anything. That's all I'm asking, Ethan assured her. And Ryan? Don't you dare tell him about this, Alice said sharply. He's just starting to come to terms with you being in his life. Adding your father to the mix right now. I understand, Ethan said, but he has a right to know, Alice. Daniel is his grandfather. A grandfather who didn't want him to exist, Alice reminded him. Before Ethan could respond, Dr. Pierce approached them, her expression curious. Alice, Mr. Walsh, is everything all right? Ethan's father is a patient here, Alice explained. Heart failure. Dr. Pierce's eyebrows rose. I see. I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Walsh. Ethan nodded in acknowledgement. Thank you, Dr. Pierce. If there's anything we can do, Dr. Pierce offered, then turned to Alice. Would you like some time off? I can cover your afternoon rounds. No, I'm fine, Alice insisted. Work is better than thinking too much right now. As Dr. Pierce walked away, Ethan looked back at Alice. I should get back to him, but please think about what I said, for your sake, if not for his. It might help you too, to say what you need to say to him. Alice's expression softened slightly. I'll think about it. That's all I can promise right now. Ethan accepted this with a nod and headed back to his father's room. Ryan learned about Daniel's hospitalization through hospital gossip. A fellow intern mentioned that tech millionaire's father being admitted for heart failure. Which millionaire? Ryan had asked, a sinking feeling in his stomach. Walsh, Ethan Walsh. You know, the guy funding our program. Ryan had tried to act casual, but inside his emotions were churning. His father's father, his grandfather, was here in the hospital. The same man who had threatened his mother, who had torn his parents apart before Ryan was even born. The man who had ensured Ryan grew up without a father, and Ethan hadn't told him. He found Ethan in the hospital cafe, staring into a cup of coffee. Were you going to tell me? Ryan demanded, sitting across from him. Ethan looked up, startled. Ryan, tell you what, about your father, my grandfather. Ryan's voice was hard. Or were you planning to keep that from me too? Ethan sighed, rubbing his face. I was going to tell you. Your mother thought it might be too much right now with everything else going on. So you're still keeping secrets, Ryan said bitterly, still deciding what I should and shouldn't know. Just like when you pretended to be my mentor instead of telling me you're my father. That's not fair, Ethan protested. This is different. I was trying to protect you. Protect me? Ryan's voice rose. Or protect him? The man who destroyed our family before it even had a chance? Several people turned to look at them. Ethan lowered his voice. Ryan, please, let's not do this here. No, let's do it right here, Ryan insisted. Let's talk about how you're still protecting the man who didn't want me to exist, who threatened my mother, who kept you away from us for 19 years. I'm not protecting him, Ethan said, pain evident in his eyes. I'm trying to figure out what's best for everyone. Best for everyone? Ryan laughed bitterly. Or best for the Walsh family name? That's not what this is about, Ethan said. My father is dying, Ryan. He wants to make amends before he goes. With your mother. With you. With me. And you believe him? Ryan asked incredulously. Ethan was quiet for a moment. I don't know, he admitted. But I know that hate and anger only hurt the person holding on to them. I've held on to mine for too long. And I don't want that for you. Ryan stood up, his hands shaking. You don't get to decide what I want or what I need. He started to walk away, then turned back. You know what? I thought maybe we could have some kind of relationship, that maybe you had changed, but you're still the same person who walked away from my mother, who chose your father over your family. As Ryan stormed off, Ethan sat alone, his heart breaking all over again. He had lost his son once through his father's actions and his own cowardice. Now he was losing him again, just when they'd started to build something. And the worst part was, he couldn't even blame Ryan for his anger. He deserved every bit of it. Later that day, Ethan stood in the hallway outside his father's room, feeling more alone than he had in years. His father was dying. His son hated him. And Alice? Alice was lost to him too, he feared. Ethan? He turned to see Alice approaching, her expression guarded but not hostile. Alice, I didn't expect to see you here. Ryan told me about your argument, she said. He's pretty upset. Ethan sighed. I handled it badly. I should have been honest with him from the start. Yes, you should have, Alice agreed, but I understand why you weren't. You were trying to protect him. Ethan looked at her in surprise. You're defending me? Not defending. Understanding. There's a difference. Alice glanced at the door to Daniel's room. How is he? Not good, Ethan admitted. The doctors don't think he has much time. Alice was quiet for a moment. Then, with a deep breath, she said, I'll see him. Not for his sake, but for Ryan's. And maybe for mine, too. Are you sure? Alice nodded. I've carried the weight of what happened for 19 years. Maybe it's time to set it down. Ethan felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Alice warned. I still haven't decided what I'm going to say to him. They entered the room together. Daniel was awake, looking even frailer than before. His eyes widened when he saw Alice. Miss Cole, he said, his voice weak. You came. I did, Alice confirmed, staying near the door. Though I'm not sure why. To tell me off, I expect, Daniel said with a weak smile. I deserve it. Alice studied the old man for a moment. You do, she agreed. But that's not why I'm here. Then why? Daniel asked. Because hate is too heavy a burden to carry, Alice said simply, and I'm tired of carrying it. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I was wrong, he said. About you, about everything. I let my pride and my prejudice destroy my son's happiness, and yours, and I kept him from knowing his own child. He reached out a trembling hand. I can never make up for what I did, but I want you to know that I am truly, deeply sorry. Alice didn't take his hand, but her expression softened slightly. You hurt a lot of people, Mr. Walsh. Not just Ethan and me, but Ryan, too. A child who grew up without a father because you decided we weren't good enough. I know, Daniel whispered. There's no excuse for what I did. Only explanations that seem hollow now. He looked at Ethan, then back at Alice. I was raised to believe that family name and status were everything, that marrying correctly was a duty, not a choice. My own father would have done the same. That doesn't make it right, Alice said. No, it doesn't, Daniel agreed. Nothing makes it right. But seeing what it did to Ethan, the man he became without you, I realized my mistake too late. He coughed weakly. Is there any chance I could meet him? My grandson? Alice hesitated, looking at Ethan. That's not my decision alone, she said carefully. Ryan is an adult. He can choose for himself. Daniel nodded, accepting this. Of course. I understand. Ethan stepped forward. I'll talk to him again, but I can't promise anything, Dad. That's fair, Daniel said. More than fair. He looked back at Alice. Thank you for coming. for listening. It's more than I deserve." As they left the room, Alice was quiet, lost in thought. Finally, she said, "I'll talk to Ryan too. He might listen to me, but like I said, it's his choice." Ethan nodded gratefully. "That's all I can ask." Ryan wasn't easy to convince. His initial reaction was a firm no. "Why would I want to meet the man who made sure I grew up without a father?" he demanded. "Who threatened you? Who didn't want me to exist?" Alice sat beside him on the couch in their apartment. "Because he's dying, Ryan, and because holding on to hate only hurts you, not him. So I'm supposed to forgive him just like that?" "No," Alice said firmly. "Forgiveness is earned, not given. And it's a process, not a moment. But meeting him, hearing him out, it might help you understand. It might give you some closure." Ryan was quiet for a long time. Then, reluctantly, he said, "Fine, I'll meet him, but I'm not promising to forgive him." "That's all anyone is asking," Alice assured him. The next day, Ryan stood outside Daniel Walsh's hospital room, his heart pounding. Alice and Ethan waited nearby, giving him space but ready to support him if needed. "You don't have to do this," Ethan reminded him. "You can walk away right now." Ryan shook his head. "No, I need to do this. For myself." He pushed open the door and stepped inside. Daniel was awake, looking toward the window. When he heard the door, he turned, his eyes widening when he saw Ryan. "You must be Ryan," he said softly. Ryan nodded, approaching the bed cautiously. "And you're my grandfather?" Daniel smiled weakly. "By blood, yes, though I haven't earned the right to that title." Ryan studied the old man closely. There was little resemblance between them. Daniel's features were sharper, harsher, despite being softened by age and illness. "Why did you ask to see me?" Ryan asked bluntly. "To apologize," Daniel replied, "for robbing you of your father, for threatening your mother, for letting my pride and prejudice destroy what could have been a family." Ryan crossed his arms. "You think that makes it okay? Saying sorry?" "No," Daniel admitted. "Nothing makes it okay. I can't change the past. Can't give you back those years." He coughed weakly. "But I wanted you to know that the fault was mine, not your father's, not your mother's. Mine alone." Ryan was surprised by the straightforward admission. He had expected excuses, justifications. "Why now?" he asked. "Why after all these years?" "Because I'm dying," Daniel said simply. "And facing death has a way of stripping away pretense, of showing what really matters." He reached out a trembling hand. "You're an extraordinary young man, Ryan. Your mother raised you well, and I'm so sorry that my actions kept your father from being part of that." Ryan didn't take his hand, but he didn't back away either. "I grew up wondering about him, making up stories about who he was, what he was like, wondering why he didn't want me." "He didn't know about you," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "That's the tragedy of it all. I made sure he didn't know. And by the time I realized my mistake, it seemed too late to fix it." Ryan was silent for a long moment. Then, surprising himself, he sat in the chair beside the bed. "Tell me about him, about my father when he was my age." Daniel's eyes lit up slightly. He was brilliant, always taking apart computers, putting them back together. But quiet, thoughtful, not many friends. He was too smart for most kids, too shy for the rest, until he met your mother. He smiled at the memory. "I'd never seen him so happy as when he was with her, so alive." For almost an hour, Ryan sat with his grandfather, listening to stories about Ethan's childhood and youth. Some made him laugh, some made him thoughtful. All of them helped him see his father in a new light. As Daniel's voice grew weaker, Ryan knew their time was running out. "I can't forgive you," he said honestly. "Not yet, maybe not ever fully, but I'm glad I met you." Daniel nodded, accepting this. "That's more than I deserve," he whispered. "Thank you, Ryan, for giving me this chance." As Ryan stood to leave, Daniel's eyes fluttered closed. The monitors beside his bed began to beep urgently. Ryan called for help, and nurses rushed in, followed by Ethan and Alice. "What happened?" Ethan asked, panic in his voice. "Nothing," Ryan assured him. "We were just talking, and then—" The doctor checked Daniel's vitals, her expression grave. "His heart is failing," she told Ethan. "I don't think he has much time. You should stay with him." Ethan moved to his father's bedside, taking his hand. Alice stood nearby, her presence a silent support. After a moment's hesitation, Ryan joined them. Daniel's eyes opened briefly. He looked at the three of them standing together, Ethan, Alice, and Ryan, a family separated by his actions, now reunited at his bedside. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. "So sorry." Then he closed his eyes for the last time, his breathing growing slower until it stopped altogether. The monitor flatlined, the steady beep becoming a continuous tone. Ethan bowed his head, tears streaming down his face. Alice placed a hand on his shoulder, and after a moment Ryan did the same. Together they stood in silence, mourning not just Daniel's passing, but all the years they had lost because of his choices. And yet, in that moment of loss, something new was born. A fragile understanding, a tentative connection, the first bridge across 19 years of separation. Daniel Walsh's funeral was a small, quiet affair. Just a few business associates, some distant relatives, and of course, Ethan. To his surprise and gratitude, Alice and Ryan attended as well, standing beside him at the graveside. As the minister spoke words about forgiveness and redemption, Ethan glanced at his son and the woman he had never stopped loving. They had come today not for Daniel, but for him, to support him in his grief despite everything that had happened. When the service ended and the guests departed, the three of them remained by the grave. "Thank you both for coming," Ethan said softly. "It means more than I can say." Alice nodded. "Everyone deserves someone to mourn them." "Even him?" Ethan asked. "Even him," she confirmed. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't come for him," he admitted. "I came for you." Ethan looked at his son in surprise. "For me?" "Yeah," Ryan said, meeting his father's eyes. "Because that's what family does, right? Shows up when it matters." The simple statement brought tears to Ethan's eyes. "Yes," he agreed. "That's exactly what family does." As they walked away from the grave together, Ethan found himself delivering the eulogy he hadn't been able to speak during the service. "I hope I can be a better father than I was a son," he said quietly. "I hope I can learn from his mistakes and mine." Ryan glanced at him. "You already are," he said simply. And in those 3 words, Ethan found more comfort than in all the formal condolences he had received that day. In the weeks that followed, healing began. Slowly, cautiously, but steadily. Ethan started volunteering in the pediatric ward, reading to sick children, making them laugh with his shadow puppets and silly voices. Alice would sometimes watch from the doorway, marveling at this side of him she had never known. Ryan focused on his internship, excelling under Dr. Sampson's guidance, but he also made time for lunch with Ethan twice a week. Sometimes they talked about medicine or technology, sometimes about the past, filling in the blanks of 19 missing years, and sometimes about the future. Ryan's dreams of becoming a pediatric neurosurgeon, Ethan's ideas for new medical technologies that could help children like the ones they both cared about. Alice kept a careful distance at first, wary of letting Ethan too close too quickly, but little by little, as she saw his genuine commitment to Ryan and his changed priorities, her defenses began to lower. One evening, Ethan invited her for a walk by the lake where they had once spent hours as college students, talking about their dreams for the future. "I'm not asking for anything, Alice," he said as they strolled along the shore. "Not promises, not commitments. I don't deserve those yet, if ever." "Then what are you asking for?" Alice inquired, curious rather than defensive. Ethan stopped, turning to face her. "A chance to rebuild. Not what we lost. That's gone. But what we can still have. A chance to be friends again, at least. To be Ryan's parents together. And maybe someday to see if there's still something between us worth exploring." Alice was quiet for a long time, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and pink. "I've changed, Ethan," she finally said. "I'm not the girl you knew in college." "I know," he said. "I've changed too. But I think maybe we've both changed for the better." Alice looked at him, really looked at him. The boy she had loved had become a man with lines around his eyes and silver at his temples, but those eyes were the same piercing blue, now filled with a wisdom and humility that hadn't been there before. Slowly, she reached out and took his hand. "One day at a time," she said. "That's all I can promise." Ethan's fingers curled around hers, warm and familiar. "That's all I'm asking for." 2 months after Daniel's death, Mercy General Hospital held its annual charity gala. This year, the event was especially significant as it marked the launch of a new scholarship fund for underprivileged students pursuing careers in medicine. Ryan attended in his first tuxedo, feeling both proud and self-conscious. As an honored guest, he was seated at the main table with Dr. Pierce and other hospital administrators. Alice looked stunning in a deep blue gown that matched her son's eyes. And Ethan, as the evening's main donor, was scheduled to give a speech. "Nervous?" Alice asked, noticing Ethan fidgeting with his cufflinks as they waited for the program to begin. "A little," he admitted, "but not about the speech." "Then what?" Ethan glanced at Ryan, who was chatting animatedly with Dr. Sampson. I've been thinking about making an announcement tonight, something public, but I wanted to check with you first. Alice raised an eyebrow. What kind of announcement? I want to introduce Ryan as my son, Ethan said. Officially, publicly. Alice's eyes widened. Are you sure that's a good idea? Ryan's just starting to accept you in his life. I've already talked to him about it, Ethan assured her. He's okay with it. Even seems a little excited, though he'd never admit it. Alice smiled, shaking her head. You two are more alike than either of you realizes. When the time came for Ethan's speech, he approached the podium with confidence. He spoke about the importance of education and opportunity, about breaking down barriers to the medical profession. Then his tone changed, becoming more personal. Many of you know that I recently lost my father, he said. What you don't know is that his passing brought about a reunion I never thought possible. He looked directly at Ryan. 19 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I walked away from the woman I loved because I was too young and too afraid to stand up for what mattered. What I didn't know was that she was pregnant with my child. A murmur ran through the crowd. Alice felt tears prick her eyes. I missed 19 years of my son's life, Ethan continued. Years I can never get back. But thanks to a chance encounter in this very hospital, I've been given a second chance. A chance to know the remarkable young man my son has become. He gestured to Ryan. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Ryan Cole, not just a brilliant medical intern and the recipient of the first Walsh Family Scholarship, but my son, a young man I am incredibly proud to claim, and whom I hope will someday be proud to claim me. The room erupted in applause as Ryan, blushing but smiling, stood to acknowledge the introduction. Ethan stepped away from the podium and approached his son, embracing him openly for the first time. There were gasps and more applause. Dr. Pierce wiped away a tear. And Alice, watching the two men she loved most in the world finally acknowledge each other publicly, felt a weight she had carried for 19 years finally lift from her shoulders. As Ethan stepped off the stage, he found himself face to face with Alice. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around him, hugging him tightly before all the assembled guests. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving him what he's always wanted, a father who's proud to call him son." Ethan held her close, breathing in the scent of her coconut shampoo, the same one she had used in college. Some things never changed, and some things changed in all the right ways. The morning after the gala, Alice was making breakfast in her kitchen when there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Ethan, casual in jeans and a sweater, holding a bag of fresh bagels. "Morning," he said with a smile. "Thought you might be hungry after last night. Come in," Alice invited. "Ryan's just getting up." The kitchen was small but bright, sunlight streaming through the windows. As Ethan set the bagels on the counter, Ryan emerged from his room, hair rumpled from sleep. "Morning," he yawned, then spotted Ethan. "Oh, hey yourself," Ethan replied. "Brought breakfast." Ryan nodded appreciatively, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "Thanks for last night," he said. "The scholarship announcement was cool." "You deserve it," Ethan said. "And not because you're my son, because you're brilliant." Ryan smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes, Ethan's eyes. "Well, I did get my brains from somewhere." "Your mother," Ethan said without hesitation. "Definitely your mother." Alice laughed, the sound filling the small kitchen with warmth. "Don't sell yourself short, Ethan. He got his love of technology from you, and that weird finger-tapping thing." Ryan looked between his parents, a curious expression on his face. "This is weird, right? The three of us having breakfast together like this." "Weird good or weird bad?" Alice asked. Ryan considered this. "Weird good, I think. Like this is how it was supposed to be all along." Ethan's heart swelled at his son's words. "Better late than never?" "Something like that," Ryan agreed. He looked at his watch. "I should get going. Got rounds in an hour." As he grabbed a bagel and headed for the door, he turned back. "We're officially the weirdest family in the hospital, you know that, right?" Alice smiled. "I'll take weird if it means we're a family." "Same," Ryan said, a hint of wonder in his voice. "See you both later." As the door closed behind him, Alice and Ethan were left alone in the sunlit kitchen. Ethan stepped closer to her, cautious but hopeful. "Was it okay? Me showing up like this?" Alice nodded. "More than okay." She looked up at him, her brown eyes soft with an emotion Ethan had feared he might never see again. "I think I'm ready, Ethan." "Ready? For more than one day at a time," she clarified. "For whatever comes next. For us." Ethan's heart soared, but he kept his voice steady. "Are you sure? There's no rush, Alice. We have time now." "I'm sure," she said firmly. "Life's too short to waste it being afraid. I think we both know that now." Ethan reached for her, drawing her close. As her head settled naturally against his shoulder, he looked out at the sunlight streaming through the window, illuminating the 3 coffee cups on the counter, a visible symbol of their new reality. A family, at last. "We're finally home," he whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to her hair. And they were. After 19 years of separation, of regret, of what might have beens, they had found their way back to each other, not to what was lost, but to something new and precious. A second chance, a family forged through pain and healing, stronger for having been broken and mended, a love that had waited 19 years to come home,